how do you want to think about AI as it relates to your career? 4 different roles, 4 different paths. There's one in particular that is not something you want to choose. Hi, this is Erica Parker Price, your host for Next. I haven't done an AI dedicated episode since April in the AI world. That feels like light years. And today, what we're going to be talking about is something else that came out of that movie that I saw. I don't know if any of you have seen it yet. I'm not even sure if it's streaming yet. I saw it in the theaters. It was called the AI doc, How I Became an Apocaloptimist, which is a mouthful of words, but somebody who was straddling the line between thinking it was an apocalypse that was coming for us and wanting to be an optimist. It was specifically done by Daniel Rohr. I think it's a great movie for making you think and for figuring out what your role is in all of this. And so that's where I want to go today. What is the role that you're going to take? What is your plan for AI and how it's going to impact your job, your industry, your career? And when I say role, I don't mean that I'm going to come out of this saying everybody should go be this profession. You know, you'll have a lot of people here saying you should go for a blue collar job. I saw Meta rolled out $115 million. I think it was million. At this point, I feel like I confuse the millions and billions. So maybe it's $115 billion. Okay, I just paused this and I went and looked it up. It is millions that they're spending, 115 million, which might sound like a lot until you compare it to the 600 billion they're spending on building out the data centers. But my point is, no, I'm not going to tell you that you should go get a blue collar role. I'm not going to tell you what is the job that's going to be protected from AI. What we're talking about here is what is your plan? So at a larger level, not down to the role specific level, but how do you want to plan for this change that is coming, this change that is already here? The model that I'm going to give you presents 4 different roles for you to choose. How do you want to think about how AI is going to be impacting your career, your job? And I actually got it from a group called Encode, and it came to me after I saw the AI doc movie. So one of the premises of the AI doc is who is going to solve this issue for us? Who is in charge of it? It is you. It is you and it is me. It is all of us. So there's a website. It is called planforai.org. And they talk about AI from many different perspectives. I personally am always most interested in the parts that are related to your career, but they have all kinds of things up there related to the environment, etc. These 4 roles, you might call them personas, you might call them mindsets, but I'm going to tell you what they are. They are the shaper, the anchor, the sleeper, and the tactician. 4 different roles, 4 different paths for how you want to go forward and think about AI as it relates to your career. Now, just go with me on this. You don't have to have an idea right away. You don't even have to choose one of these. The idea is really to think about it more. How do you want to think about AI as it relates to your career? I'm going to walk through each of them. And you may find that you are a certain way right now and you want to be a different way. You may find, yes, I am already in the best mindset I possibly can be for this. Or you may recognize an area where what you're choosing right now isn't necessarily working to your benefit. So it is really just a discussion to open your mind. I'm going to be honest. When I look at these 4 roles, there's one in particular that is not something you want to choose. It's not the safe route. There's another one, which if some of us could choose it, we probably would, but it might not be available to you right now. And then there's 2 others, which are different ways of approaching the change that's either coming or already here. And it may depend on what you want to choose. It may depend on what you're trained to do, what your skill set is. So let's jump in, and we're going to start with the one that I am not recommending. We're going to start there and we'll work our way to the ones that I think may be the better options. So the first one is the sleeper. This particular one is exactly what it sounds like. You kind of would rather just sleep through anything that's happening. You don't have a plan. You're not using AI, or you're definitely not using it in a professional sense. And you're just going to kind of wait it out and hope that it all goes away. Now, the people that came up with this framework, Plan for AI, their recommendation on this one is choose one of the other 3. And I would have to agree. I think sleeping through this is not going to turn out well. There are definitely some jobs that are going to be less impacted. And actually, let's go ahead and we'll talk about that second one right now. The second one is called the Tactician, and they describe it as you write out a high-paying traditional path while preparing to pivot. Now, I will say, depending upon your age, you may just write out a high-paying traditional path until it's time to retire. Now, the reason that I said that one of these may not be available to you, you were listening to my podcast, so my guess is that you are not in this position. But I'm going to talk about it anyway, because it may be something where you're trying to get back into the old role that you had. And this might be the path that you end up choosing. You had a good job, whether it's high paying, medium paying, or whatever, something that you were good with. And that's what you're trying to get back to. Maybe you want to have a pivot. Maybe you don't even need to have a pivot. Maybe you can just write it out. They describe this as a time stint in consulting, finance, big tech, big law. It could be lots of different types of careers, but these are positions that in the future are going to have a greater impact on AI, but for a variety of reasons, including just the slowness of people to change, our unwillingness as humans to do so, regulations, laws, all kinds of things, it may take a while for that to actually have a great impact. I would say it is somebody who is happy with the way things were and would like to get back to that. And if that's available to you, it isn't a wrong choice. You may need to embrace AI as it comes into your position. It may actually be of assistance to you as you move along. But for now, you're going to embrace the job you have, the money that's possible. Now, like I said, I don't think this one necessarily applies to the people listening to this podcast, but I wanted to put it out there. So first we had the sleeper. Second, we had the tactician. Probably neither of the ones that you're going to choose. So let's get into what comes next. The next one I would say is probably honestly the one that I choose. It's called the anchor. And their description of it is a human-first traditional path where AI still struggles. Examples of this include electrician, teacher, politician, EMT, journalist, comedian, social worker, public defender, surgeon, rabbi, priest. When I look at these jobs, I see them as all having one thing in common, and that's something I talk a lot about. It's connection. It is either physical connection, something like an electrician, somebody who's coming in and physically changing the wiring in a house or a building, or it's personal connection, right? Somebody like a spiritual leader, somebody like a journalist, for example. I think of myself, the coach, in that category of somebody who has a personal connection. I 100% know that people can go ask questions of their favorite LLM and get advice on how to get back to work. What I do for my clients, how I hold space for them, how I help guide them to what their intuition is already telling them, that's something that I still think is uniquely human. And even as AI gets better, the people that I work with are currently preferring a human version of that. Now, there's a couple pieces around this that can frequently be used to describe these types of anchor positions. Frequently, they're licensed, they're credentialed, or regulated. There's some sort of laws, and that's true for me as a coach. I am certified, accredited, all kinds of different things. Also, it's the human personality, right? It's that face-to-face interaction. Maybe it's a video interaction, which I think takes it one step out, but really something where there is a strong need for trust. I know in the coaching business, we always talk about how before you hire a coach, you need to know, like, and trust them. Quite frankly, that's one of the reasons that I do my podcast, is so that people, before they hire me, they can learn what I'm about. They have an opportunity to start to see who I am and to build that trust. Even though it's one way in the podcast when I'm talking to you, who knows, maybe you're talking back to me, you're welcome to. I always love connecting with people. So if I haven't said it recently, come find me on LinkedIn. I am easy to find as Erica Parker Price, especially if you spell my name with a K, you will get right there. The other thing about this one in particular is it is most likely to happen, this anchor, where you're able to anchor into a career where AI is lacking something. Maybe it's the training data, maybe it's the situational context, it might be cultural nuance, but somehow AI isn't able to master that level of competence, right? That level of understanding of the other person. So we're talking about a lot of human connections here. Now, there were a couple jobs that I named earlier, like an electrician and a surgeon. Those are more in the physical connection piece, which is a little bit different. But again, something that you can anchor into. People talk a lot about robotic surgery, and I think about it in the age of AI. I actually have had the opportunity to support a family member who went through robotic surgery. And I thought, it's not really a robot doing it at all. It is a human surgeon who is operating a tool that is a tiny, tiny, tiny little tool, much smaller than his hands, getting inside to do this heart surgery. But it is really more like a remote control than it is having a robot do it. The surgeon was 100% the person that was making those decisions. They were just using the precision of a tiny tool that a robot could do that human hands couldn't do inside somebody's heart. So I actually put that in a totally different category. We've talked in this category of the anchor, we've talked about these jobs, and I've been trying to stay fairly close to what this Plan for AI group talks about in these 4 different roles. I would say that there are also a lot of roles that may have a component of this. Some of you may already be in data heavy jobs. Maybe you're an accountant, maybe you're an analyst, maybe you're a software engineer. I'm using that word data really broadly, but an analytical type job. That doesn't necessarily seem to fit into the one that I just described here, the anchor. And it may not fit into the other one either. So we're going to talk about that at the end. But the 4th one that I wanted to talk about is specifically called the shaper. And this is described as somebody who's working on the front lines of AI to shape what's coming next. And this can take a lot of different formats. You may be somebody who wants to focus on the policy. You may be somebody that wants to focus on the research. You may have a grand idea for an AI startup. It has never been easier to start your business. So maybe you're going to go out and start your own company. This is really somebody who sees AI and all that it's capable of and really wants to get in, wants to get their feet wet, wants to get their hands dirty, wants to jump in and start doing it, whether they are creating it, guardrailing it, teaching it, but somehow you want to be involved in AI. If I look at the people that I see around me that are in that shaper category, I know when I went to AI Startup Week last year in Seattle, there were 800 AI startups in the city of Seattle. So we definitely have lots of people that are forming those startups. Given that that was, 6 or 8 months ago, there's probably double that number right now. Where I actually really see very little involvement is on the policy side. And I know that there's a lot of us that are waiting for our government to start regulating things. And as far as I can see so far, there's very little of that going on. The environmental side of it, there is a ton of noise in that space, especially on social media, especially from the younger generations. But what I'm not seeing is a lot of talk about what's the best way for us to be implementing AI that would be environmentally safe. What are the dangers here? So I think those areas are still wide open for people to step into. I'm not saying that it's necessarily your thing, but the idea here is to be thinking about, how do I want to think about AI? And right now you may be thinking, you know what? I don't think it's really going to impact my job at all. I do want you to question, are you in a very unique 1% of the world where it's not going to impact it? Or are you in that sleeper category? Are you in denial as to whether it's going to impact it? Or maybe you're the tactician. Maybe you're like, yep, it's going to have a big impact and it's not going to impact me based on my age. I'm going to ride it out and it's going to be fine. That might be true, but I think now is definitely the time that you want to be having a very eyes wide open moment to see, how is this impacting my role, my career, my industry? So of all 4 of these that we've talked about, I'm curious to know which one you think you are in. Do you think you're the sleeper? Probably not, right? Most people don't say they're the ones in denial. You might not have listened to this podcast if that was you either. Do you think you're the tactician? You're in a decent place, or you're working to get back to that decent place. And there's no fault in that. If you had a long career and you want to just get back into it and ride out the last 5 to 7 years and you can find a way to do that, that's okay. Are you the anchor? Are you somebody who either has a career that can be anchored into the human skills, or you can focus on the human skills part of your job enough to keep it safe for you? Last one, Are you going to jump right in? Maybe this is you and you're a software engineer and you're pivoting more into the machine learning side of it, or you are just going to become the best vibe coder that there is out there. And that's really what you're mastering. Maybe you're the one that's going to step out there on a limb and start proposing policies, start coming up with the ideas for how do we build a sustainable future, even when things are changing as rapidly as they are. I was listening to one of the bigger tech companies this week, and they were talking about the interaction between humans and AI systems. And they specifically were talking about, is it human in the loop? Do we need to have the human in the loop? And the phrase that they used instead was human in the lead. Now, I like that idea. I like the idea of the human being in the lead. I don't know that it's currently the way that is being rolled out in companies, but I think it's a good way to challenge us. So my question to you is, how can you be in the lead in your own career? And I really am curious. Feel free to respond to me. Go to ericaparkerprice.com, or you can always reach out to me on LinkedIn. Have a great week, and I'll talk to you next Monday.